Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition on the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. For FPS monitoring, I'll be using CAM. If you want to download this software, there's a link down in the description, and if you want to support me, there are Humble and Amazon affiliate links down in the description as well. So, Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, I'll be doing 1080p, 1440p and 4K. And this video will be kind of different than the usual ones I do on games, since this game is very linear and it's kind of difficult to replicate the same actions twice, and 4 times will be kind of insane. I decided to test the benchmark tool. This is one of the best benchmark tools I saw in a PC game, period. 7.5 minutes long, which is insane for a benchmark tool. And it shows you very different parts of the game. You'll see cities, forests, boss battles, many enemies fighting at once. That is great because you can see very different instances of the game being tested, which usually takes a long time to do manually, and you can just compare the same thing side by side, which is what I did here. I show you 1080p, 1440p, 4K maxed out and 4K low settings all at the same time, so you can see the performance of each. At the beginning of the video, as you can see now, I'm showing you the graphics settings for each resolution. But I'll tell you right now is 1080p max settings with 4 times MSAA. You can use 8 times MSAA if you want. I honestly don't see much of a difference and there is a performance hit, but you'll still be over 60 frames per second just fine. Then at 1440p I use maximum settings again, but this times 2 times MSAA. You might say that at 1440p is not necessary. That really depends on your monitor's resolution, so some people might see a difference with MSAA at 1440p, still enough to be over 60 frames per second all the time. And finally at 4K, at max settings, I saw that it dropped below 60 frames per second quite a bit, so I decided to lower the settings a little bit. That wasn't enough to see a difference, so I show you the lowest settings at 4K, except in textures. Since textures here are not demanding at all, we're using still less than 2 GB of VRAM, so 4K low settings will be with dynamic shadows turned off, and the quality option, which I put on low, and that gave us a more stable frame rate, still not constant 60 frames per second, but better than 4K max settings, obviously. But you'll see a normal trend at 4K and other resolutions. The GPU usage usually stays below 90%. At 1080p and 1440p I can really understand because, well, the frame rate is very high, so the CPU usually cannot handle that many frames per second. You'll see at 1080p, sometimes you go over 120 frames per second without a problem. So I thought it was normal, but then once I just cranked it up to 4K, which usually is more GPU bound, we'll still stay below 90% usage, so the GPU is being underutilized. If it was used, for example, at 100% or 99%, we should be seeing a small improvement in performance at 4K, but it's not the case. So in my opinion, 4K here makes no sense, since you can have 60 frames per second just fine at 1440p. I wasn't expecting 4K to drop below 60, but here we are. And the main difference between the benchmark and the full game is that on the full game, the game is capped at 120 frames per second. The benchmark tool is uncapped. I'm not sure why that's the case, because the benchmark runs over 120 just fine, but the game itself is just at 120 and doesn't go over that target. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think about this different way of testing the game. Thanks for watching and see you next time.